Hey, my name is Emma and let's talk spooky stuff. How are you guys? I really hope you're all in good health and I don't know, that you're surviving right now. It is such a weird time to be alive. From my last recommendations video, I noticed a lot of you said that this was very helpful during this time. So I brought back the recommendations for another round, and this time I'm going to be talking about thrillers as well as horrors because the recommendations that you sent through, which were to my Instagram, I felt like they were well suited to thrillers or horror thrillers, so I'm going to include them both in this. If you missed the first video in this series, is this a series now, in this style of videos, go check it out. I left the link down below for easy access, and hopefully you can find a suggestion or just a push in the right direction from watching this video. Most of these will be available on VOD because they've been out for a while, so you should be able to find them for rent, VOD style, or on a streaming platform to watch this weekend, today, or even after this video. I have a lot to get through, so let's jump into it, but I do want to say a lot of you guys asked for recommendations for movies with twist endings, but I'm not going to put that in a video because that would be a disservice to the film. If you knew it had a twist ending, as movie lovers, I'm sure you feel the same. When you know there's a twist at the end of a film, you're trying to figure it out the whole time and it really distracts from the film itself. So I wouldn't do that to you guys. But let's jump into the first recommendation. A bunch of you asked for depressing and disturbing movies, and I don't know why you would want to do that in a time like this. I mean, I watch a lot of depressing movies, but I was really surprised with how many of you guys were looking for that kind of film to watch now. And I'm warning you, these are quite depressing movies. The first one is a really disturbing, intense watch, and it is Prisoners. Prisoners stars Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal, and you really need to watch it now before anyone spoils it for you. The film is about two girls that go missing, but when the leads go cold, a father takes matters into his own hands. Back at it again, Queen of Vague, but you need to check this one out if you want something disturbing and very depressing. And speaking of depressing, probably the most depressing film, one of the most depressing films of all time, it's a cult classic, Requiem for a Dream. I had to mention this film. If you have not seen this film, oh my gosh, I am warning you, you cannot go back. This one stars Ellen Burstyn, Jared Leto, and Jennifer Connelly. It is one of the most intense films you will ever see, and it's about several stories of drug addiction and how they intertwine. As I said, this one cannot be unseen, so really only watch it if you want to be depressed. But I did want to mention a film from 1988 that really has stuck with me. Not so, well, it is disturbing, but it's more of an emotional roller coaster, and that is The Vanishing. This is a film you'll never forget. It's like a psychological torment film. There is a remake, but the original is something very special. I've actually done a video on the remake versus the original if you do want to check it out. The film is about a couple who stop at a service station. They part ways for a moment, and one of them goes missing forever. But what really happened? Definitely check it out. I don't want to spoil anything, but it is intense. Buzzwords, I know. But the next film I do want to mention, because I know you guys will be mentioning in the comments if I don't, and that is The Girl Next Door. This crime, drama, horror is deeply disturbing and not for the faint of heart, mainly because it's based on a true story. The film is about the horrendous torture of a teenage girl who is placed in the care of her aunt. The next request I got was for cult films, and I have a bunch because I love these kind of movies. I'm going to mention some ones that I don't think are too obvious, so hopefully you haven't seen them. The first one I want to talk about is Sound of My Voice. This is a drama mystery sci-fi starring Brit Marling. It's very interesting because the film is kind of like the TV show The OA, and she stars in both the TV show and this movie. So if you've seen The OA and you really liked it, you should check out this movie. It's very strange, but the TV show came after the movie. In this one, two filmmakers attempt to document what is going on in a strange cult that worships a woman from the future. The next film I want to talk about is The Endless, and this was directed by Justin Benson, who also did Spring and Resolution is actually connected to this film. The film is about two brothers who seek answers after finding a videotape that reveals their strange past. A great film starring Elizabeth Olsen is Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. Halloween. Say that 5 times fast. Dare ya. In this drama mystery thriller, Elizabeth Olsen is a woman who is struggling to regain her identity after fleeing an abusive cult. And I also wanted to mention Charlie Says from 2018. I feel like this one went under a few people's radar because there were so many films about the Manson family that came out 2018 to 2019. But this one you should not ignore if you're interested in that cult experience. I was really impressed by this film. It follows the girls from the Manson family and their time in prison. I feel like the portrayal for this film was very different and one of the most respectable films on the subject. Okay, let's take a deep breath and take a step away from these depressing movies for just a second, and let's talk about anything weird. This is requested by Jared, who said anything weird, kind of like Annihilation, Villains, and The Lighthouse. I wouldn't really say Annihilation is a weird movie as much as it is visually pleasing, and Villains is a little bit offbeat. So I've got some really wacky suggestions. Hopefully they're what you're looking for. The first one is Japanese comedy horror House from 1977. If you've seen this film, you know I had to recommend it. It is off the wall crazy. In this one, a schoolgirl and her classmates travel to her aunt's wacky haunted home. You can see by the trailer, this film is absolutely bonkers. The next film is so bad it's good, and that is REPO, the Genetic Opera. This musical horror sci-fi stars Bill Moseley, Paris Hilton, Alexa Vega, and Anthony Head. And this film is just iconic. Please don't watch this one alone. It's too good not to share. This is a dystopian horror musical about a biotech company that launches an organ financing company. But when the clients don't pay, things get bloody. Okay, let's take it down a few notches because those ones are wacky. This next one is just a strange journey and quite sinister, and that is POSSUM. This drama horror thriller is about a puppeteer who is forced to confront his inner demons after returning to his childhood home. This film is abstract, slow, and there's not much dialogue, but it's very intense. Next, you asked for visually pleasing films like Neon Demon, and I have to say, what do you guys think of first? I think about Mandy. This film's imagery is stunning, haunting, and at times too much to take in. The film is about a couple whose lives are shattered by a hippie cult and a group of demon bikers. The director of this film has a trademark called panflares, which is the process of aiming small LED lights into a barrel of the lens to soften and make the frame look milky. But I promise you, there's so much more techniques at play here. And then of course, there's Nicolas Cage's performance, which is just something on its own. Did you know he had a screaming coach for this film? That should say it all. The other film I have to mention when I think of things that are visually pleasing is The Love Witch. This comedy horror romance was directed and written by Anna Biller and is one of the most beguiling cinema experiences I've ever had. The Love Witch is a beautiful mix of 60s and 70s fashion and film techniques with a captivating storyline about a modern day witch who uses magic to lure in men. I love the scenes in this film when she's driving. It's just like a film clip come to life. And the fact that the storyline is just so captivating as well, it works. I love it. Home invasion films, because, you know, we want something to keep us up at night when we know we're isolated in our house. The first one I have to mention, because I know some of you guys still haven't seen this movie, and it's Funny Games. I don't care what anyone says, this is the godfather of home invasion. When this film first screened, it shocked the audience badly enough that it made viewers, including some film critics, walk out. In this film, 2 men enter a home and terrorize an innocent family. Of course, there's a remake of this film by the same director, but I do urge you to watch the 1997 one, and then you can watch the remake. They're pretty much shot by shot the same, and Naomi Watts is in the remake, who I love, but I do prefer the original. If you're one of those people whose biggest fears is home invasion, why don't we mix that together with a little bit of extreme French horror? Nightmares for Mums. I'm talking about French horror movie Inside. This is about a woman who is pregnant and she is tormented by a stranger who wants her baby. Warning on that one, it is very gory, extremely gory. It's a lot. There's scissors involved. From one extreme horror to the next, you asked, what are the best extreme horrors from Australia? Similar to the Snowtown murders. So I've kept these ones as crime horror movies, so hopefully that's similar enough for you. The first one is Daddy's Girl. This one is a little bit harder to find, just letting you know. This is about a father who takes the law into his own hands when his daughter goes missing. Again, very gory and very intense, which leads me to The Nightingale. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this one or heard the buzz. This is marked as an adventure drama thriller, but it is truly horrifying. It's about a young Irish convict who seeks revenge after she experiences terrible acts of violence. The main reason I wanted to bring that one up is because I know I got a lot of hype and I know a lot of you guys saw it and loved it, and I really want to recommend, if you did like it, to watch Killing Ground. This horror thriller is directed by Damien Power, and it's the story of a couple who go on a camping trip that takes a turn after they come across a horrendous crime. And of course, one last one before we leave this request. The most extreme Australian horror movie of all time is Bad Boy Bubby. It has to be. This one isn't a crime and isn't as realistic as the others, but it stars Nicholas Hope as Bubby, a man who has spent 30 years trapped with his deranged mother, but the day has come for him to join the outside world. I really can't talk about that one if I wanted to in detail, because every single aspect of that film is very much censored by YouTube, but check it out. It's very intense. My next request I'm very happy about because it's stalker films, and this is my time to shine. Stalker films for me don't just mean someone following you, it also means someone trying to become you. That's like what I love in a stalker film, and there's no better film that does that than Single White Female. In this classic drama thriller from 1992, a woman advertises for a roommate and she gets more than she bargained for when her new tenant begins to become exactly like her. I think it's one of those things where it's just more scary when the stalker is someone you know, or someone you know is manipulating your life in a certain way and just taking over. For me, those are my favorite kind of stalker films. But I do want to recommend a newer stalker film that was my favorite film in 2018, and that is UNSANE. Directed by Steven Soderbergh and starring Claire Foy, this is about a woman who is trying to move on from her dark past when the culprit finds a way to torture her from the inside. One last one to balance it all out is a classic 2000s stalker teen thriller, SWIMFAN. This is a guilty pleasure. I've watched this film over 20 times. In this one, we follow a high school senior who has a one-night stand with a woman whose intentions turn sinister. My next request I got was for films that were like Killing of a Sacred Deer. It's really hard to find a similar film to this. Obviously, I would say any other Yorgos film is filmed in the same directorial way, but I wanted to give you something different. And for me, the inner workings of this film are about crossing the line, or a blurred line that you kind of push. And I have two recommendations. Although they're more popular films, I feel like they do kind of fit that bill. The first one being Nocturnal Animals. This drama horror thriller is directed by fashion designer Tom Ford, and it stars Amy Adams and Jake Gyllenhaal. In this one, a woman is haunted by her ex-husband's novel, which she interprets to be a targeting tale of revenge. My other recommendation also stars Jake Gyllenhaal, who I love obviously, and this is Nightcrawler. This crime drama thriller is chilling. It's about a man who records crime on the streets of LA, but lines are blurred when he gets too close to the action. That film is amazing. I'm sure you've probably seen it if you like Killing of a Sacred Deer, but if you haven't, I have made your day. Come thank me later. My next request was for action horror that have like a badass, why do I say like that? Badass. It doesn't sound good either way I say it. That have a strong female lead. I think that's what you're asking for, just like Ready or Not. So I've tried to pick out my favorite action kind of horror movies that have a strong female role. The first one has to be You're Next. In this Adam Wingard horror, a woman must fight back after her family is attacked during a getaway. Erin in this film is just badass, and you need to check it out if you haven't. Even if you don't like action horror movies, you'll love this one. Next is something you might not expect me to talk about. It's The Shallows. And this one really relies on Blake Lively's performance as she fights for her life when becoming stranded 200 yards from shore with a great white shark circling her. It took me forever to watch that film, and I think it's actually quite good. So I recommend it to you guys, especially if you liked Crawl. I'm gonna mention one more, but I do wanna mention, of course, most horror movies have kick-ass female leads. That's what horror is all about. It's all about the final girl. We got Halloween, we got Alien. Those are the classics, but one that is kind of like a classic of the 2000s is The Descent. Shauna McDonald plays an absolute badass as Sarah in The Descent. This film is about a group of friends who embark on a cave expedition that soon turns into a fight for survival. I know I mention it all the time, but I'm just pushing people. If you haven't seen it, it is pretty badass. 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 One last question today. I was asked for sad movies like Super Dark Times, and I have two ones that I really think fit the bill. The first one is Boys in the Trees, which is an Australian drama horror thriller. And in this one, on Halloween night, two teens embark on a surreal journey through their memories, dreams, and fears. You just need to watch this one and don't look up anything before checking it out, but I'm very proud it's Australian. The next film I'm not a huge fan of, but I know a lot of you guys really liked it, so I wanted to include it on here. Obviously, we all have different tastes, and I do want to include a film that I know a lot of people do like, and that's Summer of '84. This one has a very similar feel to Super Dark Times. The movie is based off nostalgic 80s coming-of-age films, and the storyline follows a group of friends that suspect their neighbor is a serial killer. Once again, for me, it just felt really hyped up, but I think it's very similar to Super Dark Times. So hopefully the recommendation is the right fit for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for being here and watching to the end if you did. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I do 2 videos every single week about horror movies, giving you horror recommendations and just talking about the genre. And I'd love for you to be here. And let me know if you want to do another one of these recommendation videos. Happy to do them. But make sure you follow me on Instagram so you see when I ask for requests. I'll talk to you guys very soon. Stay spooky. Bye.